Hey everyone, Jamie here. Just before we get to today's show, I have a favor to ask. We want to put together an episode featuring your stories about how you are using artificial intelligence. So if you've got stories to share, please send them in to frontburner@cbc.ca. And I guess we're looking for stuff that goes a bit beyond I asked ChatGPT for restaurant recommendations for a trip to Spain. More like, have you been asked to train AI that you think could replace your actual job? Or maybe you run a business and have AI do your accounting. Maybe you work in law and you've used AI to summarize large volumes of contract data. How did that go? Email us at frontburner.ca, again, with your stories about how you're using AI, and we'll be in touch before we use them in an upcoming episode. Okay, here's the show. Last week, a 5,000-word post on X with the headline, "Something Big is Happening," went viral. It was written by a guy named Matt Schumer, the CEO of HyperWrite, an AI writing tool. And in it, he says that he's recently watched AI go from a helpful tool to something that, quote, does my job better than I do. And he's not the only one from the tech world with similar warnings. The CEO of Anthropic, one of the biggest AI companies today, thinks it could replace half of all entry-level white-collar jobs in the next 1 to 5 years. His company's lead safety researcher just quit, penning an open letter about how hard it was to get Anthropic to let, quote, values govern actions. A good part of all of this has to do with the abilities of AI agents, which are basically AI models you give a task to perform for you with the promise of little supervision. So are we on the precipice of something big? Can we afford to ignore the rise of AI agents? Or is it another way to build hype amid fears of a bubble? Will Douglas Heaven is here today. He's a senior AI editor with the MIT Technology Review. Will, hey, it's great to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So it seems that much of the excitement and concern that we've been hearing out of the AI industry over the last little while has been centered on the rise of AI agents like Anthropic's Claude. So maybe let's start there. What are AI agents?
Yeah, it's good actually to think of them as AI agents. So like the idea of agents is not new at all. Agents are just pieces of software, machines that go and do tasks on our behalf. So, I mean, your thermostat is an agent. Your Roomba, if you have a robot vacuum cleaner, is a kind of agent. And I know some people may remember, like in 2010, there's what's known as there was a massive crash in the US stock market, and there was a flash crash, and that was lots of little autonomous algorithms, trading on people's behalf. The big buzz around AI agents is now they're simply smarter. Like sort of under the hood of an agent is an LLM like Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. So in theory, they can do a far wider range of tasks, and they can go off and sort of do things more intelligently than agents ever used to be able to. And you can hook them up to loads of other software, sort of your email, your social media accounts. If you're completely reckless, your banking software, all that kind of stuff. The buzz around AI agents is the next wave, if you like, of the buzz around chatbots, which kicked off 3 years ago with ChatGPT. Here was a kind of software that we could talk to and it talked back, but talking only gets you so far. Now, if you have an agent, then it can go off and do stuff, not just talk. So that's where all the excitement's at.
Well, just tell me a little bit more about kind of the crazy things that we've been seeing happening lately. What can the latest iteration of this technology actually do?
The sort of the demos we've seen from the companies developing these things were initially sort of like a browser agent that could go off and on your behalf, book a vacation or concert tickets or restaurant reservations and that kind of stuff. Which it's neat, but it's limited in the sense that it's not clear that that's really more useful or quicker than doing those things yourself. I think where the big change will happen is going to be less visible. It's going to be the multi-agent systems. We have lots of agents interacting within businesses, sort of in the enterprise. So if you think of how manufacturing was completely revolutionized over the 20th century with sort of automated workflows and conveyors of robots and machines putting stuff together, you can sort of use that analogy to think of what agents might do behind the scenes in a hidden way. Agents handing off office tasks to each other. You can imagine you're a company making stuff and selling that inventory. You could have an agent taking in orders, talking to other agents, deciding what to prioritize, what to build, who to ship it off to, and all that kind of back office stuff could be automated in theory.
Just on your point that, you would have to sign over a lot of control to these agents if you wanted them to do certain things, right? Are there any safeguards that would exist right now that would prevent me, for example, from giving all of my personal information and financial information and access to my finances over to one of these agents and telling it, I don't know, to just invest in the stock market for me?
Nothing to stop you doing that. Previously when sort of agent software was something that you would only get from, for one of the big companies like Anthropic or OpenAI, I don't know for sure, but I imagine they would have some kind of safeguard or some kind of warning not to do that. But now we're seeing agents free to download, open source. You can sort of tinker with them and adapt them however you want. And those, you can do whatever you want, and people have been. So if you wanted to do that, you could. It would be extremely ill-advised, and I don't think anyone should do that yet. The amazing thing about Maltbook is that it was itself was vibe coded with the help of an agent and put together really quickly, but it means it has all kinds of security flaws in it. It was sort of revealing sensitive information from people. Your agent would give up sensitive information to other people's agents. Because there was such a frenzy of activity, it was hard really to get the bottom of exactly what was happening. But LLMs and agents that run on LLMs can't tell the difference between an actual well-meant instruction piece of text that they're meant to read and a malicious set of instructions that tell the agent to go and download its owner's bank details and upload them to this website or whatever. There's nothing built into the software itself that would stop it from doing the bad thing.
And just Maltbook, just for people listening, right? It's like this kind of social media site, right, where AI agents can talk to each other.
Yeah, it was billed as a social network for agents, and with a sort of cute little tagline that humans are welcome to observe. It was a lot of fun. It was sort of AI theater in a sense, and everybody out there is so keyed into what's going on in AI right now, and so eager to know what the next wave is going to be, that it's not really surprising that something like Maltbook, which, as you say, is a social network for agents, took off. And some people were very quick to say, this is the future of the internet. This is the future of AI agents.
Yeah, Elon Musk did, right?
Yeah. Elon Musk says a lot of things.
I know the Maltbook stuff got just a ton of attention and generated a lot of headlines, but there does seem to be this real vibe shift lately where people in the industry are warning of real, tangible, practical consequences here. And also a tangible difference in the new kind of models that are coming out, right? And so I'm thinking about that post written by Matt Schumer, this guy who's in the industry, and he compares this moment that we're in to the month before COVID hit and upended the world. He talks about how very recently, just at the beginning of February, as I mentioned, new models were released from OpenAI and Anthropic, and something clicked, according to him. And now he is not needed for the technical work of his job. So, for example, he says he tells AI that he wants to build this app, tells it what he wants it to look like, and then he walks away while the AI writes tens of thousands of lines of code. And he writes that these models are starting to display something that resembles judgment and taste, that they are unrecognizable from models even 6 months ago, and that it's coming for law, medicine, writing, design, etc. And I've seen responses to this very viral post that he wrote oscillate from everyone needs to pay attention to this to this is an overblown ad for paid AI subscriptions, right? That it's like total hype. And so where did you land after reading that?
I'd say very much in the latter camp that it's overblown hype. I mean, I'd say a couple of things about it. Like whenever you read something like that, I mean, ask yourselves, who is this person and why might they be writing this? Yes, as you say, this guy has an AI company, and he has an interest in hyping up the technology that his company sells. There was also something quite strange about comparing it to COVID. This was not only an enormous worldwide catastrophe that killed millions of people, but there was also something inevitable to it. It was very hard to stop the spread of COVID once it started. And I'm sure it's deliberate. I mean, you hear this a lot from AI people, that the sort of rhetoric is that AI is coming and we can't do anything about it. You just have to prepare, which is kind of weird when you think about it, because this is technology that people are making, and the people making it can decide what kind of technology it is and how fast it comes. I don't know whether what he says about his job sort of changing like that so quickly because the AI now writes all his code. I do know that AI encoding is one of the areas where I think AI has had the most impact so far. I mean, AI is very, very good at writing code, but even on that specific point, opinions are really polarized about exactly what that means. Whenever you see claims about this, when you start to push on them and ask exactly what is the AI doing, it quickly gets sort of hand wavy and unclear. Like in some cases, for some software projects, I think the AI can do quite a good job at generating most of it. But that does not mean that AI can now just generate all software securely or not. Again, just let's go back to Maltbook, something that was vibe coded and it had all kinds of hideous security flaws in it, and it wasn't a very good piece of software. I'd also say that it's not the first time at all that we've heard grand claims made by people in the AI business. Last year there was a really viral essay called AI 2027 that sort of tried to present a picture of what AI was going to be like in 2027, which is just a year away, and the world was going to be changed. I think this is the messaging that comes out of Silicon Valley in particular all the time, and I really do think you need to take it with a pinch of salt. I think something big is happening. It's really unclear exactly what that is and how wide its impact is going to be and how fast it's going to happen. So it's definitely an exciting time, and all of this is worth watching. But anytime someone tells you that something big is going to happen, and that person has sort of privileged insight and is coming to warn us, I do roll my eyes a bit.
What do you make, though, of the argument that it's these latest models people seem to be fixating on from Anthropic and OpenAI that are kind of unrecognizable to the models that we saw 6 months ago? Let me give you an example. I watched a friend of mine the other day create this program that scraped available music online, matched the beats per minute, and created this live ongoing music along with a live sort of ongoing graphic. In other words, the work of a DJ. And his point to me was, and he was using Anthropic's latest model, was that he couldn't do this 6 months ago with this technology. How are you thinking about that argument?
I think the technology is getting better all the time, and you do sort of have these leaps in capability. Again, just bringing healthy skepticism into this, which I think you always need. I think it's incredible that these models can do that at all. The example you just gave, they really could not do that 6 months or a year ago. You can now vibe code a website and all kinds of simple apps, which is really, really cool. depending on where you're standing, it's either really, really cool or terrifying if your business is to, make websites for people or to code these apps. Things are changing at that level, but it is still quite a big gulf between coding up something like that, which is relatively simple, and there will also be hundreds of thousands of examples of that type of code that the models will have been trained on. So they were probably relatively good at doing stuff that involves internet scraping and that runs as an app or a website. There's a big gulf between that and genuinely novel code that solves a problem that has not been solved before, that requires a very complex piece of software engineering. We may get there. I mean, because coding has really, really improved recently, but we're not there yet. So just the idea that because it can do this thing, it's also then going to be able to do the other far harder thing really, really quickly. I think is still an open question, which is again why I think sort of knee-jerk, somewhat scaremongering posts about how everything is going to change overnight. We should all panic is not sort of a helpful part of the discourse, but there is always a lot of that.
I mentioned in the intro news of Anthropic's safety lead, Mrinunk Sharma, resigning last week with this open letter, which I'm sure you've read. It talks about he talks about how the world is in peril, not just from AI, he says, but a whole series of interconnected crises. And he talks about how he had repeatedly seen at the company how hard it is to truly let our values govern our actions. That's the quote. I won't ask you to try to interpret exactly what he's speaking to in his own experiences at the company, but broadly speaking, do you think these companies are thinking hard about their responsibilities to create safeguards around this technology right now?
I mean, I wouldn't want to say they're not. You will always find people who think the company should be doing more and are not taking the risks seriously enough. And that's simply because people within AI have very, very different views about what safety should look like, depending on your sense of like how quickly the technology is developing, which is still a gut feeling rather than something that we can properly predict. And then once it's developed to some more powerful future state, whether it'll be something we can or cannot control, and whether or not it'll be risky, depending on your instincts about all of that, you're going to have very, very different opinions about whether the company you work for is doing everything it should. And then, of course, the companies themselves are, like any company, is balancing all the resources required to work on safety with developing products, making profits, and all that kind of stuff. Which, for some researchers, I think it sits uneasily for them. If you're a researcher or an engineer and you think you're ushering in this incredibly world-changing, powerful technology, and you personally believe that there are risks inherent in that endeavor, then you may be the type of person that thinks your company should do absolutely everything it possibly could to make sure it's safe. Whereas other people at the company might think we're building technology which sure has some risks, but we're on top of those, and it's not something that they would worry about as much as the person sort of whistleblowing or leaving or writing an open letter.
We've moved through quite a lot of stuff here today, a lot of these latest headlines that we're seeing. And just as our listeners navigate this real influx of AI news and the discourse kind of between AI boosters and naysayers, and I'm sure they are kind of filled with the same anxieties that, frankly, I am too. Like, what is this going to do to my job, to my livelihood? What kind of future will this be like for my children? And so, is there a final thought that you might want to leave people with here as they try to consume this information and try to make sense of it?
Yeah, I think we should all try and be as aware as possible of what's happening, like both in terms of how quickly the technology is being developed and what uses it's then being put to by different industries, different sectors. Specifically to the question of job security, I think I would try and sniff out the scaremongering and dismiss that, because for every viral blog post like Matt Schumer's that we were talking about, there are far more sober studies and analyses that show that in practice, this technology does not live up to the hype, that it cannot do human tasks in the workplace as well as, Sam Altman might have been telling us it can. That's not to say that it's not going to be able to. It just means that it's not doing it. I think history has shown us that changes in society and economies happen more slowly than the technical innovation itself. So yes, we may have amazing new technology that's now here and in theory can do these things, but actually putting that in practice in human settings where, human workflows and processes are, chaotic and messy. And I mean, time and time again, we've seen that when you take that cutting edge technology and actually put it in those situations, it rarely works as salt. And I think it's going to take some years to figure out exactly what it can do and, maybe more importantly, what it can't. In the meantime, I think, yes, there probably are risks to jobs, but that may not be because the technology really can do your job. It may just be because, managers and bean counters in companies believe it can. So they'll fire a lot of people and take the software that can do it cheaply. Probably will be quite a bit of upheaval, but it won't be exactly as we're told. It's not going to be AI agents coming in doing all our jobs anytime soon.
Okay, that's a fairly optimistic note to end on. So shall we end there? Will, thank you so much for this.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
All right, that's all for today. I'm Jamie Poisson. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you tomorrow.